Good afternoon, everybody. It's Galen Rogers calling you from Northern Virginia, a little area called Fredericksburg, and thought I'd talk today about kind of a subject I enjoy, which is RVs, recreational vehicles. So there's a lot of ways to find out good information on the different aspects of different RVs, what's good, what's bad. In many cases, it's all a lot of it is subjective. All of us have our own personal preferences, likes and dislikes. But there are some basic information or basic comparisons you can make. So when I first started originally looking for an RV a few years back, I really I Googled, of course, like most people, and found a lot of information out there. All right, everything from the Motorhome Family Motor Coach Association. You got all kinds of blogs, all kinds of websites that talk all about RVs. You got people out there who run a blog every day of their RV life. There's one, it's a young couple who basically both quit their jobs. I don't know if they like sold off some investments or whatever, or lived off investments, but they went full time and they were young. They were, in my mind, they looked like they were in their late 20s, but they were probably in their early 30s. So the little series of videos they did was called Gone with the Winds, WINNS, and they really centered more on the objective outlook. Some, I mean, obviously their opinion came in a little bit, but they were pretty objective. I was surprised. So anyway, so when I started looking, the first thing we did was I thought, oh, we got to have a Class C. Got to have a Class C. It's smaller, it's easier to drive. Now, a Class C is a motorhome that kind of looks like has a van front end and then a big box on the back of it. You can get them up to, I think, like about 32, 33 feet. And you can get them with double slides or maybe even more. It's been a while since I looked. Of course, just so you know, that type of a Class C with whatever the max slides they have, they've improved over the years. They've improved a lot of their frame, but they are pretty much right at the max of their capacity. The frame is of weight. Okay, so it reduces your towing capacity. There's different Class C's out there. One particular, I don't remember the manufacturer, but it's called a Concorde, and it's, I think, 32 feet, something like that. But it is actually built on more of a truck frame than a van, or a bigger truck frame. Let's put it that way. So actually, it has a better weight capacity. You can actually tow pretty much a full-size vehicle behind it. So, but like I said, there's a lot of differences out there. Drivability, when you're sitting in a Class C, you feel like you're driving a truck or a pickup or a van. The only thing is that the box is sticking out, I don't know, 6-8 inches on each side of the cab. So you have to be careful where you have to kind of learn where that's at when you're driving down the road. You have to adjust how you align yourself next to in the lane. I found when we test drove that in a Class A that I personally had an easier time lining up the Class A down the middle of the lane than I did with the Class C. And probably subconsciously I didn't know it at the time, but really what I was doing is I was lining up the center line of the lane, whether it was the dash white line or the no passing line, whatever, at a certain spot on the front of the hood of the cab. But what I found out was that was putting the box over the line, because I was doing it like I was driving a pickup or a van. And so um, it was a pain for me. I didn't like it. The Class A I had no problem with because the front edge, left front edge of the vehicle is the same edge all the way down the side. So now Class C's, you actually can sleep more people. You can usually sleep anywhere from 6 to 8 people in a Class C. In a Class A, you'd be hard pressed to sleep 6 people unless you put them on the floor. So the Class C, usually the couch, or you'll have a couch in it. It'll make out into a bed. It's not a queen size bed, but 2 small adults or 2 children can easily sleep there. The dining booth makes into a full size bed, which a couple kids can sleep there. Then you have the big chunk over the cab, which is a bed for 2 people. And then, of course, you've got the bedroom, which has got 2 people. So, whereas a Class A, you've got usually the bedroom. In ours, we happen to have 2 couches. So that's that make out into a bed. So theoretically, I could sleep 6 people. And as long as they weren't big adults up front, then they'd be comfortable. But I guarantee you, my 2 granddaughters pretty much take up each couch, even when we lay them flat. So, unless they were littler and it'd be a little tight squeeze. But technically, it says we can sleep 6 in our RV. It would be tight, but we could make it happen. Now, the other thing you got to look at, of course, is your holding capacities of like your waste tank. You have 2 different waste tanks. One we call the gray water tank, which is like your shower water, your sink water. And then you have what we call the black tank, which is, your pretty much your septic tank. Okay. And the Class C's have a little bit smaller capacity, which is not that big a deal when you stay in a campground, but when you're out there boondocking it or roughing it out in the wilderness with no sewage and anything like that to hook up to, then that becomes something you got to pay attention to, because I guarantee your waste tank your gray tank will fill up. You'll probably fill it up 4 or 5 times before you even get close to filling up your black water tank or your septic tank. So another thing, talking about being out in the wilderness, some smaller RVs don't come with a generator. You have to look at that. And so that means you would have to buy a portable generator to carry with you, which now becomes something you got to put in storage that takes up space from something else. Most of your little bit, when you start getting up 26, I think, and up Class C's and your Class A's, pretty much most of them come with a generator, which is really great because that's what powers your air conditioning in the living area. And you have to run that even pretty much when you're driving down the road, because the cab air conditioning is not enough to keep the whole motorhome cool. So that's some of the differences between a Class A and Class C. Of course, a Class A is built definitely on a truck frame, but so it has a much heavier weight capacity, towing capacity. But there's one thing to think about, and that is in a Class A, the frame is heavy duty. The frame that you're sitting on, but the cage around you, which is the box, is not much. it doesn't survive a whole lot in an accident. It really doesn't give you a whole lot of protection. That's why when you're driving an RV and you see us going down the road, we're pedal to the metal. We're doing 75, 80 mile an hour in these humongous monsters. And we probably shouldn't, because number one, we can't stop very quick. And number two, we really don't have anything around us in those Class A's to protect us. Okay. They look beautiful, but they're pretty much all fiberglass around the front end and in the windshield and fiberglass. That's pretty much my entire front end. Now there's metal but it's like aluminum. It's an aluminum frame. And there's some steel in there, but it's not really a lot there. So you have to take that into consideration. Now in a Class C, that is an actual motor vehicle front end. That cab is a motor vehicle front end. So it is built like a normal motor vehicle. They basically have just taken that van or that truck, and the cab, like it's normally built, is there. And then they just don't build the rest of it behind it and put this box, this motorhome box on the back end of it. So you're sitting up there driving. You should still be careful, definitely. And you probably shouldn't be driving 75, 80 mile an hour in it anyway. Because again, you can't stop very quick. Then, I guarantee you try to swerve and you got problems. But you have a normal motor safety vehicle cage around you. It has to meet the same normal motor vehicle safety requirements that if the rest of it was just the van behind it, it still has to meet those standards. Now, one thing I did mention was what they call the Super C, which is basically a Class C on steroids. It is a major truck, not like a semi truck, but close to it. But it's like some of them are more like your dump trucks and things like that. And they usually have a diesel engine. It'll be up front. It'll be what we call a diesel puller because the engine's in the front. And it's some of them have like the Ford F550 front end. Some of them have the equivalent Dodge front end. And then some of them will have like an International Harvester or other type of larger truck front end and frame. So they're all this big, and they're diesel. They're much heavier. They go up to like 35 feet. And so it's kind of a cut in the middle between a Class A and a Class C because you have a much more weight capacity and towing capacity, and usually a little bit bigger, more bells and whistles, the diesel engine, much more power, and things like that. So now, once you get past that, then you get into the Class A's. The Class A's, you got the gas-powered Class A's and you got the diesel Class A's. The gas-powered Class A's are, you can go everything from probably under 70,000 brand new, all the way up. Probably if you get one with all the bells and whistles, 500, 600, 700,000. I haven't looked in a while. And you can get a lot of the things that come standard on a diesel on those higher end Class A gassers, as we call them, like air brakes and airbags, suspension, things like that. But the thing between, the first thing you start with between a gas and a diesel engine on a motorhome is the life expectancy. So the life expectancy of a gas engine motorhome is probably only a couple 100,000 miles. Now, you will very rarely ever see a gas motorhome or any motorhome with that kind of miles. It's very usual to see a 15-year-old motorhome with 30,000 miles on it. Okay. Now, if you've got somebody who's living in it, going cross country constantly, yeah, that you might see the mileage higher. But on average, if you go look, especially at used motorhomes on the internet, you're going to be amazed at how less the miles are compared to, say, a normal vehicle that old. So, but now the diesel motorhome, it's going to last. I mean, its life expectancy on its engine is like half a million miles, 500,000 miles. You don't even break in a diesel engine, they say, up until around the 75,000 mile range. And it's quite normal to see an old diesel motorhome, 10, 15 years old that has, 35,000 or less in miles. My diesel, I got a 2006 Winnebago, and it had a little over 50,000, which was actually a little higher than probably average. But it just means it was out on the road a little bit more. So now the second thing that is a telltale sign of how a motorhome was used, if you're looking at a used motorhome, is the interior. Okay, the interior, just think about it, like your couches at home, when they start getting kind of worn, I mean, you've had them for a few years and used a lot, there's the telltale wear signs. Okay. Well, in a motorhome, if you walk into one that's regardless whether it's a year old or 10 years old, and if the interior looks like it was rode hard and put away wet, in other words, heavily worn, then that might not be a motorhome you want to mess with, because that really indicates that it was used a lot. Even if the miles are low, it was used a lot. It was used in a stationary location a lot. Then, of course, the next thing you want to check on any used motorhome that you're looking at is everything mechanical, everything physical. So you're gonna do test drives, taking it through the normal paces, the transmission, the brakes, that kind of stuff. You're gonna check every cabinet latch, every cabinet hinge, every drawer latch and drawer glide. I mean, you're gonna check all that stuff. Check the shower, check the bathroom, make sure the toilet holds water. So the toilet, normally when you're camped and you're hooked up, it has either a hand pedal or a foot pedal, and that's how you flush. Well, it has like a ball valve that comes like this over the pipe, right, where everything drains down. So, and it seals right there. Well, the way you know for sure it's sealing is once you've flushed and everything, and then it closes, then you push down on the valve, the handle or the foot pedal, just a little bit, and that actually opens up the water valve and allows water to come into the toilet, and then it'll set on top of that valve. If you've got a good seal, so none of the aromatherapy can come back up out of the septic tank, that water will stay there. It'll stay there, whether you're driving down the road, it won't leak through. Now, if it leaks through, if you go back in an hour and there's no water there, then that seal's not good. Let me think. Of course, you want to check all your under cabinets, your everything you can see. I mean, wiring, plumbing, everything like that runs through the walls, runs through the overhead, and so a lot of stuff you can't see, you can't access. Now, TV wise, there's still a lot of used RVs out there with the old humongous tube TVs. Okay, so in your negotiations, especially for a used one, you want to try to get the dealer, if you're dealing with a dealer, to replace those. Even if they want to charge you a little bit, maybe split the middle, it's still worth it, because sometimes it's not easy. But other times, I mean, I changed out on our second motorhome, which was a gas powered one. I changed out the old TVs and put a flat panel in it, both front in the living area and in the bedroom. Well, I've got on our current one, the dealer changed out the front one in the living area. I had someone redo my entertainment cabinet on the outside in the storage compartment that was had the old tube type TV in there, and then the one in the back bedroom is like in this humongous steel cage or aluminum cage, whatever. It's going to be a chore. I've got to do that. I just haven't had a chance to get to it. But then the other thing is you have to, the fact that your cable lines run through usually the overhead, so it's kind of hard to check things if it's not working like that. I bought a tester where you put a connector on one end to go to the other end and plug it in, and it sends a signal. And even if it says it's good, it may not be great. Okay. So now getting back to the differences between the Class A gas and Class A diesel. Now the Class A gas, of course, the engine's in the front end. So when you're driving down the road, you got the engine noise. I mean, it's just normal because you're sitting right there, right in front of it. And it doesn't have as much power, like when you're going up hills and things like that. It doesn't have as much towing capacity. So now I was lucky on the second one we had, which was a gas. It actually had an exhaust brake. So if I was going down a hill, I could turn on the exhaust brake and it would help me. Kind of like what they have on diesel trucks or on diesel motorhomes. I didn't have airbag suspension. I just had standard, shock, just like you got on your truck, your pickup, your car. Of course, they were bigger and heavier duty, but that's, so it rode a little hard is the easiest way to say it. I mean, it wasn't bad, but it wasn't like riding in a nice luxury car. It wasn't that smooth. You felt it. Another thing about a Class either motorhome, when a semi goes by you notice it. Or when you go by a semi, you notice it. Now, that Class A gasser I had didn't have a front sway bar. It's actually like a great big shock absorber, but it's mounted, I guess they call it transversely across the front end. And all that does is that actually gives you more stability in your front end steering, makes it easier to drive. You're not white knuckle driving, trying to keep the motorhome between the lines. But even so, it wasn't that bad. I was going to put it on it, but then when we decided to go ahead and get this diesel one, it came with it, so that was good. So now, the diesel. Obviously, it has the exhaust brake, which is standard on any diesel motorhome. I've got air brakes, I've got airbag suspension. So it's rides much smoother. Most times I can, if I wanted to, I could one hand steer it because it's, it does have that crosswise sway bar up front. Steering, I don't know what you really call it. It's been so long since I messed with it. I just don't remember, but it just does. It's a totally different drive, much smoother, much nicer. Of course, now I've got 57,000 miles on it, so technically, I'm not broke in yet. The engine. Now, let's talk about something that everybody likes to ask. I was the same when I first was looking at motorhomes. Gas mileage. Well, I can tell you right now, there's not really much gas mileage. The smaller engines, of course, actually will get better gas mileage. I was getting, some of the really small Class A or Class C's can probably get 12, 13. Depends on the engine. It depends on the weight and how fast you're driving. I mean, it's like anything else. The faster you go, the more gas you use. Now, the gas-powered motorhome I had, it was a 38 footer. I was getting about 7.5 miles a gallon. All right. And everything I checked from various blogs and things like that, clubs, motorhome clubs, things like that, that was pretty much right where it should be. I mean, that's about normal. Well, my diesel, it has a 350 Caterpillar engine in it, turbo, and I get 6.5 miles a gallon. Okay. So I gained 2 feet and I lost 1 mile a gallon, but I gained a lot more power, towing capacity, and all that good stuff. So the gas, that's one of the things you got to look at. Okay. A lot of people not really realizing it will buy a motorhome, use it a couple times, and then park it and hardly ever use it, and it just sits there and rots. So it's not an inexpensive thing to drive. In many cases, you could probably, if it was just like you and your wife, like it is for me and my wife, we could almost probably fly there, stay in a hotel, fly back, and not spend any more money, or maybe even spend a little less money than driving somewhere, staying in a campground with the motorhome, and then driving back because of the cost of the fees for being in the RV park, the cost of the gas. But the big thing is that wherever we go, it doesn't matter if we go to Texas, to Canada, to California, we are always in our own home. Our sheets, our bed, our plates, so that's really what it's all about is it's ours. We feel comfortable. And part of that type of life or vacationing is you're taking your time, you're kind of enjoying, as much as the destination is important, getting there is just as important. How you get there, the places and the things you see. So, that's why most of us, a lot of us get RVs and want to keep using it because of that. Okay. And so I think I talked about this once before, if you're looking at a used RV, obviously you're checking everything operational, underneath, inside, outside. You want to make sure the TV antenna will crank up and you actually get reception. You want to make sure the VCR comes with, or the VDR or DVR or whatever it is, DVD. You want to make sure they work. You want to crawl underneath it. You actually want to crawl underneath it and look at the undercarriage of that motorhome. Motorhomes are stored anywhere from a nice pristine inside garage type situation to all the way out in the South 40. Okay. They might be covered. They might not be covered. You never know. So you want to look underneath. Motorhomes coming, especially from the South, Gulf area, or even from the North where there's a lot of snow and stuff. A lot of times your undercarriage will be heavily rusted. Okay. You got to watch that. You don't want to get a motorhome that looks fantastic, low miles, but is going to fall apart from the bottom, when you hit a hard bump. Okay. You don't want it where your generator might drop off. And I've seen them like that. When you actually go to look for serious, wear comfortable clothes, maybe even some, that you don't mind getting a little dirty, because that's really, only you can guarantee what, that you've done everything. The dealers are pretty good. Most of them, but But again, at the end of the day, you're the one signing on the dotted line, driving it off a lot. So make sure, you check everything. Open every compartment on the outside, check it, make sure they close and they lock properly. Um, check the batteries, how old they are. Um, that's just kind of common, normal sense. So you're gonna have house batteries and you're gonna have engine batteries, and depending on the size of the motorhome, that will dictate the size of the battery bank you're gonna have. In most cases, your house batteries will charge when you're driving down the road and your engine's on, um, and but it's possible they won't. I mean, it just depends on the age of the motorhome and how it's set up. I know mine does. Both of them did. Um, the and I do believe on this Winnebago, my engine battery actually will trickle charge from when I'm connected into what we call the shore power and running a motorhome off of electrical current from a pole outside. I think it'll trickle charge my engine batteries. Um, so another thing is talking about parking. You don't want to park it on blacktop because blacktop in the summer gets hot and it kind of gets flexible, almost liquefied. Walking on it, you wouldn't notice it, but when you got 40,000 pounds sitting on it, you'll notice it, and you'll have ruts. I've got here at my house, I have a blacktop driveway and parking area, but I created a special parking spot just for the motorhome out behind the house that is gravel. I put down like 4 inches of gravel, and it don't go anywhere. It don't move, and so that's the good thing. So I don't have to worry about it sinking into the blacktop. Although I did apparently go right along the edge a little bit one time, apparently, because I've got a groove now from where right where the tires went. It's kind of indent. There's an indentation. You can tell it was tires. So now different motorhomes have different amount of slides. We have 3 slides. We have 2 in the front and 1 in the back. And most of us who have slides will tell you more is better. I would love if we had a 4th slide in the back, so we had more room, in the back. But it's the 3 we've got is great. I'm happy with it. It's not something I just have to have and going to go buy another one. But if I was to look again, I would be considering that. You definitely want 2 slides up front if you can get it. If you're looking, because it just gives you more room when you're staying someplace like a motorhome for a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, whatever, or even living in it, like some people do as they get older and retire. When you're camped and you got them slides out, it's just much more open and airy and more comfortable. You're not bumping into each other. Plus, it gives our dogs places that they have more room to lay down, so that's why we like it. Now, some of the RVs, newer ones, have what they call a full side slide. And it has even the refrigerator, the residential refrigerator is on the slide, the kitchen. I think the jury's out on that because I've seen a lot of posts where people have had problems with that just because it's so much extra weight on that full slide. Our slide stops just in front of the refrigerator, and we just last summer replaced our gas electric refrigerator with a residential refrigerator. Love it, much better. But so it's just basically the little dinette area and the couch, and then on the other side it does include the kitchen area, which is the sink and the little bitty gas 4 burner stove, and we actually have an oven. But again, that's not a lot of weight, so that slides out, and it's great. So you have to look at what with them in and with them out and that kind of stuff. If you're looking at whether Class A or Class C, you got to, you know, you've got to decide what you want and what you want and don't want. But when we were first looking, I was, I can't go over 35 feet. That anything bigger than that, I can't drive it, man. It's just too huge, blah, blah, blah. What I found out was the first one we tried for a short while was a 35 footer. And then we bought that 38 footer. Well, that 3 feet, I didn't even notice. And then when we traded in on the 40 footer, I didn't even notice. It does affect when you're turning left and right, you know. You got to swing out. You got to go wide. You know, I mean, if you ever watch a semi or a large truck turn, yeah, they got to kind of go out into the intersection before they can't turn like a car or a regular pickup. Now, one of the things to also consider, though, about size is that your federal parks, like national parks like Yosemite and those, you know, the Tetons and those places like that, the Grand Canyon. Well, number one, they were built way before motorhomes were this big. So the roads weren't designed for humongous large motorhomes. And the campgrounds that they have in them, for the most part, aren't designed for them. In fact, we've got one right here in Northern Virginia. The largest motorhome they will allow in the park is 38 foot. And they only have a couple of spots for that because I was never able to get a reservation because the 38 footers spots were always taken up. But if you read most of the blogs, a lot of people they're all saying the same thing. The larger motorhomes just can't get in those parks, and so you know, that's something to consider. Now your parks outside of the national parks, your RV campgrounds, things like that. Yeah, there's some older ones out there that can't handle a large, you know, 40 foot, or can't even some cases 35 foot. But by and large, most of them are changing and improving their sites. So we haven't found it to be a problem, except of course this one national park. But even if we can't stay in the national park, usually there's campgrounds, RV parks, and things like that outside of the national parks that you can easily stay in and drive. And then you can just drive your vehicle that you're towing with you to go see it. Now, another concern or consideration is, are you going to tow a vehicle or not? That's a personal preference. There's some people who don't like to tow a vehicle, and when they get to where they're going, they call up Enterprise and rent a car. And then there's other people who, you know, buy all the equipment, have their vehicle set up so they can tow, whether it be a tow dolly, a trailer, or what we call flat tow, where it's just a tow bar, and you know the car's transmission is put in a certain way so it can be towed. That's what I do with my truck. So I mean, and then for those of us who tow, you'll probably find it 3-to-1 that like the flat tow versus a trailer or a tow dolly. Trailers in many cases are not quite as hard to hook up as a tow dolly, only because it's a little higher and you're not especially getting down on your knees. But with a tow dolly, you're getting down on your knees, you know, to hook everything up to the undercarriage of the vehicle up on the dolly. And with when you flat tow, really you're hooking up to what they call a tow plate or a base plate that's mounted to the bottom of your vehicle, and some prongs stick out the front end that are removable usually, and you just hook the tow bar to that, and then you hook safety chains up, and your wiring, and off you go. So it's, for us older farts with bad backs, it's a lot easier. Now I do know we've run across different people whenever we went camping, who had full-size enclosed box trailers that they drive their car up in after they hooked it up to their motorhome. and that's how they towed their vehicle. And the only downside to that is then you have to park that trailer somewhere when you're in the campground, because your campsite usually doesn't have that much room, and so you have to take your car out, then take your trailer over and put it in their storage area where they let you park them. And but then a lot of people will do that just because it gives them extra storage. A lot of full timers, that it's kind of like their that way they can pack even the kitchen sink, so to speak, or workshop with them. So with when it boils down to it, you look at the objective items, towing capacity, um, physical size, how much space do you need? Of course, the cost is always something you have to do it. What the RV industry or motorhome association recommends that anybody contemplating buying a motorhome to go and rent one for a couple weeks, stay in it, go camping, see if you like it. Now, the one thing I haven't talked about are towables, like trailers, fifth wheel trailers. Never bought one, so I really can't give any kind of definitive um, discussion about it. I say a lot of people out there love them, but I also see people um, as they get older, like in their 60s and 70s, trade them in and get a class A or C just because they don't want to have to deal with the hooking up and breaking down. So one of the requirements my wife and I had was that we could stop at any rest stop and fix ourselves a sandwich, with our dogs and everything right there, in a nice, comfortable, cool environment. And with a trailer, pretty much, you can't leave. Your kids or your family can't be back there while you're up in the tow vehicle. Um, it's not safe. You don't want to put your animals back there because it's not safe. Um, because anything could be going on back there and you wouldn't know it. That's one of the reasons we chose not to get a towable. I've had aunt and uncle who had one, loved it, went all around. So my folks did it for a long time. They loved it, but then they got a Class A and used it twice and parked it in the driveway and never used it again. Um, so it's I mean, let me tell you, I see people out there that in their 80s. I don't know if I've seen anybody in their 90s yet, but I've seen people in their 80s still out there going strong in their motorhomes, loving it. And I will say this: the RV community is a very friendly, straightforward, and honest group of people. Now, with that being said, anybody or any group of people are going to have their few individuals that don't live up to that description. But for the most part, you will not find a friendlier, more outgoing group of people. Um, it's it's just great. We've taken our granddaughters to several places with us. Outer Banks. We've taken them to campgrounds over in Gloucester. We took them to Florida for a week down Pensacola. It's just great. Yeah, we really is. I mean, I wish we could have afforded it when my kids, when their mother and their uncles were younger, because we would have really enjoyed it. It's a great family activity. So I know I've been all over the place, but what it boils down to again is you have to compare your apples to apples and then your oranges to oranges. Your objective items. What are the minimum requirements you need? Do you want a gas? Do you want a diesel? Now, some of the reasoning for that will be subjective, but a lot of it may be objective. In other words, I need more towing capacity. I plan to go back and forth across to the west coast through the mountains, so I want more power. I want the air brakes, those kind of things. And then, do you want a Class C? Do you want a Class A? Because you can get diesel in both, you can get gas in both. Um, So it really boils down to it. Now there's some fantastic, humongous dealers in a couple different places around the country. You have your small dealers usually around most towns. In fact, right here in Northern Virginia, one of our small dealers, it was Safford RV, got bought out by Campers World or Camping World. I don't remember what the name is, but they're a national chain. You'll find them everywhere. Um, but probably one of the biggest, if not the biggest, um, new and used dealer is called Lazy Days. They're in Tampa. They're also in Arizona, not Phoenix, Tucson. They're in Tucson, and I think they just opened a spot in Colorado too. Um, and then you've got a place called PPL down in Texas, and then you've got there's a couple of big places down in Texas. Usually, you can Google motorhome dealers or RV dealers, and you're going to find the big guys. The benefit of a big guy is usually they have all the capabilities of any modifications, any upgrades that you need. They have a much bigger selection. They'll have financing, insurance, extended warranty, which, oh, by the way, definitely check out your own sources. You know, I checked out, my credit unions. I checked out USAA, but by and large, they were able to get a better deal through their sources, better interest rate. Now I found a national dealer on extended warranties for my RV, kind of, and a lot of times they won't go more than about 10 years old. Luckily, I was right underneath the wire. So when it runs out, I can't extend it because it'll be too old then. But let me tell you, you want to consider that, because when something goes wrong on an RV, it is not inexpensive to get fixed. Your air conditioning, your plumbing, you really, some of the stuff you got to try to do yourself. Like I just fixed the toilet. The toilet valve broke, and which sucks because I just fixed it last summer because it wasn't holding a seal. I just put in the new seal material, but this year the actual it's plastic connecting arm snapped right off, so I had to tear it all apart and order it. And once I found out what was wrong with it, and buy a new one. My air conditioning, I actually have a heat pump system in this one. It's a bottom or a basement air conditioning. It's actually a heat pump, just like you have in your house. But come to find out, the uptake runs on the outside, but under the cap, the rear cap, by the engine, and it's leaking, and that's where it's taped. So I've got to try to get in there and tape it, or I don't know. I have to take it to a dealer, to a repair shop. Another thing, on Class A's, very rarely you're going to find a spare tire or a jack, because let me tell you, if you have flat, you and I are not going to change it. You definitely want to get the roadside service, which comes is pretty much standard. Many companies offer it. Good Sam's, I've got mine through somebody else, but you definitely want that, because that basically, if you break down, they come out. They try to get you running if they can. If they can't, then it includes towing service. If you have a flat tire, they come out, they change it, fix it. If it can't be fixed, well, yeah, you got to pay for the tire, but still, you call them up and they do it. So that's one of those conveniences that you really need. You just can't change a tire on an RV yourself. It'd be like you personally trying to change your tire on your semi. It's not something most of us can do without the right equipment. So, but the big dealers will have all of that in-house. One of the things Lazy Days does, they call fly and drive. So you start talking to them, you go on their website, you look at something, you see what they have, you start talking with one of their salesmen, and you set up, when you're definitely for sure you're going to buy a motorhome, they'll pay for you to fly down there and pick it up and drive away. So, I'm a firm. We bought both of our motorhomes at Lazy Days in Tampa. We love them. And they're just great people to deal with. They have been over backwards to help us. Like I said, we tried out one for a while. Well, we actually bought it, but that's the one we found out had a complete rust out of the undercarriage. It was so bad that if you turned on the generator, it's probably going to vibrate itself right off the vehicle. I didn't find out until I got it here down in Virginia Beach and had it taken it through a safety inspection. I told the shop to just do a complete once over. I just wanted to make sure there's anything minor stuff I need to take care of. Well, it came out, it was major. I called up Lazy Days, told them about it, and they said, just bring it back. So we did. And of course, that was a nervous day and a half trip. No air conditioning. We didn't want everything to fall off. But we got back, and basically they just wiped out the deal, canceled the loan, gave us back our deposit, and helped us find another one that was, and I'd learned my lesson, so I crawled underneath it. But at that point, they even had their technicians go through it with a fine-tooth comb for us, and like I said, they bend over backwards to work with you and to try to help you out. So hopefully this has been helpful to anybody and everybody that is contemplating looking for a motorhome. If not, hopefully I haven't bored you too much. So y'all have a nice Sunday, and I want to thank everyone who signed on, and you guys have a great afternoon, and I hope to see you out there in the RV parks smelling the roses along the way, because remember, the big thing is it's not the destination that's important, it's the journey getting there. All right, y'all have a great day. Bye-bye.